Hashem Srasai Titzach Ufiyagi Tilasacha. We're now in the 10th parak of Hoshea. Another parak. These are hard prakim to understand. So what I'm going to do is just take the key elements that I think would be good for us to understand. Again, Bnei Israel are rebuked, but this time they're compared to a vine that has beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fruit and so much potential. But what do they do with it? They don't use the fruit effectively. And so Hashem gives them all of the capability to be beautiful, luscious grapes, but yet they use it for the wrong things. And that is what they did with the Avodah Zarah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us so much latov. Tov meaning Torah, but Tov also meaning beauty and amazing abundance in our lives. But if we don't do anything with it, then Hashem says, then what's going to happen is I will take it away. And that's exactly what Hashem does. He takes away the mizbachos and he takes away the matzevos, the altars. Why does he take away these altars? What's the difference between an altar that we make and the altar of Avodah Zarah? So the answer really is, in the essence of the altar of Avodah Zarah, it's made from one stone. So it's not a combination of stones like the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach brought elements together. The altars in this area, in this realm, in the Avodah Zarah realm, are all altars that are just unidimensional. There's only one thing that makes it. It's not a conglomerate of other elements, and for that, it doesn't represent growth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants our karbanos when we're growing, when we're in a mentality that is to be better than we are right now. And so otherwise, he takes it away from us because it's not helpful. It's not helpful because it derails what ultimately is the true purpose. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes through in this nevuah different parts of history, parts where they said we don't have a king, and the element of king, as we had mentioned last time, that when they asked for a king, they didn't ask for it in the right way, and the elements of a king really didn't do them very well. The elements of a king, perhaps, we have a very beautiful concept just to understand a little bit more, which is, why is it that we have parents? Why doesn't Hashem just create us the way that Adam was created, just from the ground? And Rabbi Rosner mentions that a very beautiful idea. We have parents that help us to represent what it means to be, that someone loves us enough to sacrifice themselves. And that when we see that relationship of sacrifice, of understanding, of love, of giving to somebody else, that is, in a microcosm, what we're supposed to be doing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And similarly, that was the point of having a king. There are laws for kingdom. Why? So that we know how to treat Hashem. But what did we do with king? What we did was we made it into something that it wasn't. We made it into something that the Goyim have. We made it into something that would ultimately only lead to our pleasure. And for that, Hashem, again, doesn't like the idea and takes it away. And then it goes through historically what happened in Giva. Now, what happens in Giva, we know that there are two. There's the Pilegesh Begiva, and then there's Pesel Micha. Two stories that really are at the beginning of Shoftim that highlight very difficult time in Klal Yisrael. Essentially, in Pesel Begiva, in Pesel Micha, there are people in Dan that worshipped a Avodah Zarah permanently. And Hashem, no one said anything, which perhaps led to the idea of when the story of happened with Pilegesh Begiva in Binyamin, where there were the idea of a gang rape of a woman, and ultimately that led to a civil war in Klal Yisrael. And the question is, twice, everybody in Klal Yisrael, there were all the tribes were against Binyamin. Twice they lost until finally they won. And so the question remains, how could it be that Binyamin, and then Binyamin was almost completely wiped out, and then they had the problem with Shidduchim, that they had to find Shidduchim to procreate to make sure that Binyamin was once again the Shevet. So the question really becomes, in historically speaking, how could it be that twice Klal Yisrael, the very strong people, lost against Binyamin? And perhaps that is what's also alluded to in this parak, which is that when people are not with each other in a way that Klal Yisrael are supposed to be united, then strange things happen. So first of all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry with Klal Yisrael because they didn't take care of the honor of Klal Yisrael. They just made sure that that the people were not able to. They didn't take care of the honor of Hashem with Pesel Micha, and so Hashem was angry with them. And then there's divisiveness. Well, Hashem says that I can do a lot. I can be mochel on my kavod. I can care about my people even when they're not good, as long as they are all together. But once there is a divisiveness with the Klal Yisrael, that already brings out a level of anger that Hashem has, and then it's over. And that is also alluded to here in the Psukim, where Bnei Israel, it mentions that they were bad with each other, and when they're bad with each other, Hashem has no place to put His anger except on them. The next part of the parak also highlights that Ephraim, meaning the 10 tribes, are like an animal that likes to thresh. That it goes, Hashem says, I'm going to put a lightweight yoke on him to just do minimal work, because we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't, that the Torah is not something that is supposed to be harsh, but rather something that is supposed to be, uplifting. And the Dubna Magid gives a beautiful mashal. The Dubna Magid says that there was a porter, and the porter in a very wealthy hotel with wealthy people, and the man comes and he. The porter knocks on the door. He huffs and puffs, carrying all these heavy suitcases, and he comes to the door, and without looking, the man says, no, you must have a mistake. This isn't my stuff. He's like, how do you even know? You didn't even look at the tags. Like, how do you know? And he says, no, because my stuff is very light. You wouldn't be huffing and puffing. So too, Hashem says the Torah is not something that's supposed to feel like it's a hard yoke on you. It's an easy one. But how you plow is that you thresh. You don't actually plow. You don't actually do the hard work. You want things good, even when you don't put in any effort. And so for that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that's not the way that a Jew is supposed to be acting. And so for that, because you don't plow correctly, you're going to reap what you sow. There's not going to be anything left. And the idea being that, at the end of the parak, that it's really midah k'neged midah. What you do, you get. What you don't do, you don't get. And so Hashem says, you didn't cling to me. You basically sacrificed everything that I gave you for the Baal. So now I'm going to take it all away from you. You put reliance, again, this idea of relying on other people instead of in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it might seem that all those fortresses are so tight, and it might seem that the people are so strong, and it might seem that they have all of the kavod, but it's not true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the evil wickedness that you did you've ruined your vine, you've ruined your grapes, you've ruined what there could be. Instead, what we're left with is going to be galus. And that galus is going to take away. Remember, we know that Hoshea ben Elah, he was the last of the kings, and the kingship was taken away, and the Bnei Israel went into galus. And he was a vassal king even to begin with. But essentially, we put our stock in the wrong people, and Hashem ultimately says that there is galus, and galus is going to be because of what you did. And so that's the end of the parak. Again, it's a parak that highlights. It mentions in pasuk Yod Aleph, which is a famous parak, a famous pasuk, the idea that what is it that you should do? Chesed and tzedakah in your beis. Zaru lachem letzedakah, kitzru lefi chesed. Do chesed and tzedakah. Why? Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. What is the difference between chesed and tzedakah? Well, it's either that chesed is in death, or in life, or it's in money, or in actions, and the degree to which both of those, if you plant them, Hashem says, even before you need them, then you'll be able to reap their fruit, and it will help you. And so we have a beautiful concept of what we should do, and unfortunately, we have a really strong idea of what we shouldn't do. And just to leave us with one idea from this week's parsha, that I think ties into this idea very beautifully. on the idea of the tragedy that has befallen, that we keep hearing about with Eretz Yisrael, with Klal Yisrael, and here in the parak that everything it's going to be taken away from us. So the pasuk says, "Vayeshev Yaakov b'mugurei aviv be'eretz Canaan," and Yaakov sojourned in the land of his fathers, in the lands of Canaan. And the question that is asked is, why do we care? The lands of his fathers, just like why is it going into such great detail? So really what was happening, according to the Midrash, is that Yaakov was saying, I want to live the life of my father Yitzchak, who is an Ola Tamid, who is a holy, righteous person with an easygoing life. I want to be B'Shalom. I'm tired. I'm tired of working so hard. I'm tired of having to toil and to suffer through, trials and tribulations with Esav and with Lavan, and I'm just tired. And so, what does Hashem say? Immediately, He hits him with the Nisayon of Yosef. What? Why is that happening? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending a message, and this is a message that we have here as well. And that message is a message that we all have a life. And yes, we might say, I don't like my pekel. My pekel is hard. But Hashem says that's what makes you Yaakov. What makes you Yaakov is you're not Yitzchak, you're Yaakov. You're a conglomeration of an Avraham and a Yitzchak together. You're going to impact change in this world in a unique way that is unique to each individual person. It's not going to come through a lifestyle that is not meant for you. Everyone has a life that is meant for them. And that life and those trials and tribulations are there so that we reach our highest and our best self. And that's what the parak is telling us here. There is going to be a gullus, and there's going to be devastation beyond. And we have so much, and we're going to lose it all. But it is there for a purpose. Every single time that there's a tragedy, it's there to mark for us what our lives should be, to reflect, to do tshuva, not to have that altar that is just one stone, but rather the conglomeration of many stones and many mediums until we get to our greatest purpose.